Well, Glock uses gun owners as an experiment, which led to a new Gen 6 model. Today I'm going to fill you in on exactly what I'm talking about here, with the very interesting timing of the V model and how this has now led to the Gen 6. And I'll tell you some of the updates we already see on the Gen 6. I'll give you my opinion on that too. But what I find interesting is, again, the timing on the V model and how that has now led to this new Gen 6. And so I got two different scenarios that I think have played out at Glock. And again, this is just my opinion. And of course, I want to hear yours, whatever it might be. One of my theories here is very interesting. The other one just tells me that Glock knows what the heck they're doing. And so I'll give you my opinion, whatever yours is, leave that down below. Let's go ahead and jump right in. Now let me go ahead and start this right off the rip. People that know me know that I like Glock, I respect them. I think everybody should have 1, 2, or 10 of them, but no, I don't think they are the best pistol out there. But with that being said, I respect them. And they've been doing this stuff since the 80s. I mean, they were using controversy around the Glock in the 80s to sell more guns. That'll lead into this new Gen 6 model, by the way. But let's start, just last month, really, when the V model was announced. And it's really weird timing. I mean, you had the Gen 4 that came out that was pretty polarizing. Then the Gen 5, smoother transition there. And then all of a sudden you get this V model. Now, of course, that was based around the internal geometry of the guns. Glock, along with Ruger and possibly other manufacturers, are facing pressure from gun control advocates about their guns being easily modified. Now, how you can blame a manufacturer for the actions of criminals that are illegally modifying their guns, I have no idea. Let's just be honest, switches, as they call them, are just a lot of fun. But unfortunately, there's some people that use them for nefarious purposes. We all know this. So my original idea is, okay, well, Glock is trying to get ahead of this thing. They want to stay ahead of the lawsuits. But they did bend to the pressure a little bit, where I think Ruger should just hold the ground and say, we ain't changing nothing because you can't hold us accountable. It's a slippery slope. You start to change your models and, based on gun control groups, well, you're going to be making a whole lot of changes because they ain't going to stop with just 1 or 2. But anyways, that's where the V model came from. So they just kind of pull all of their existing stock. You see shelves basically disappearing with those, original Gen 5 Glocks, and they'll be replaced with the V models now, which essentially have a little bit of geometry change on the inside. You have some raised areas around the striker lug, right? It's supposed to make it harder to attach these switches to. I don't know, within frickin' 24 hours, somebody already had one attached, by the way, so it didn't do a whole lot of good. But either way, that was my original thinking about Glock's intentions. Well, as of today, the Gen 6 Glock has now been confirmed. I'll tie the two together here in a second, but let's talk about some of the changes on that gun. I gotta be honest with you, I've always been critical of Glock because I think their engineers are fantastic but complacent, meaning they could drop any rifle, the most basic AR in the world, a lever gun, a shotgun, a bullpup, whatever. They could drop any other gun and it would absolutely sell out. It would dominate the market for years. But they continue to make the same gun over and over and over. Well, with the Gen 6, they made some real changes. We're not talking Gen 4 to Gen 5. Remove some finger grooves and stamp 5 on the slide. They actually have a much needed and upgraded grip texturing. So think RTF2, maybe tone down just a little bit from that, but definitely a huge improvement. You have interchangeable palm swells that come with the gun, a much higher undercut under the trigger guard. You also have 2 really nice ledges where your thumbs can sit with a thumb over thumb type of hand grip, and that's going to give you a nice ledge on there. So when you're actually holding the gun, you're going to be able to run that thing quick. No finger grooves, of course. All the Glock mags are now completely interchangeable, so they didn't do anything there. New flat face trigger. Hey, that's a big improvement, right? I would love to know, just dollar-wise, how much has been spent on just these Glock upgrades alone. Between the trigger, the double undercut trigger guard, the texturing, you're probably talking tens of millions of dollars potentially. they've increased the depth of the slide serration. So as they kind of come up towards the top of the gun, I don't have one of these guns, so I can't really show you, but you get a visualization, right? They just cut them deeper into the slide, made it easier to manipulate the gun as well. Of course, I'm showing you footage of Gen 4 and Gen 5 Glocks because that's what I have, but you get an idea of what it is. And then, of course, their new kind of optic mounting system, it still uses the plastic plates. It's going to come with 3 of them. It's going to accommodate all your really popular options out there, delta points, RMRs, all of that kind of stuff, right? And so the way it's kind of cut into the slide, kind of locks into place, squeezes down, and we'll just kind of see how it does over time, holding zero, all that kind of stuff. So they're all going to be optics ready. There's no separate MOS, and they're going to fall in line with the current MOS pricing. Yeah, that's pretty good, right? The barrel might be different. It's not going to be interchangeable with previous models. And of course, it's going to have that Gen V, if you will, modifications on the inside, at least that geometry change, so it cannot accept a switch as easily. So that's the changes. They didn't rewrite the playbook for striker fire guns. They certainly went fairly safe, but they addressed a lot of the issues. Like Gen 5, how many of those issues did they really address? Well, basically none. So this is probably the most amount of work they've put into a new Glock, and for them, it's a pretty significant upgrade, I would say. The first hypothesis about the timing, though, which I think is interesting, of course, is so they can have an extra leg in court if they face additional lawsuits. It's like, hey, we first of all cleaned up our entire catalog because it was a mess. You had the MOS and the, whatever, all the models, right? If you know Glock, you know they have a ton of models, and they would have the MOS, and they had some of the Gen 4 still. Anyways, whatever. They cleaned it up, okay? That's a good thing. But then the other thing the V model does is kind of give them a shield in court. Like, look, these are legacy models. We made internal changes. At this point, if they made any additional changes, in my opinion, they would just be caving to pressure. We all know that these gun control groups are going to continue to come after gun companies. That's what they do. To make these companies bend to their will, they've done it with smaller companies, and they'll do it with bigger ones alike. Here's the more interesting hypothesis I have about this timing, though. Glock uses the Gen V model, or the V updated model, to not only do those things, but to also sell you more guns. So they come out as non-MOS. It's kind of weird, right? Why would you release a non-MOS gun in 2025, almost 2026? But people will buy these guns. It doesn't matter what generation, what version, it simply doesn't matter. People that love Glock will buy this. And then when the Gen 6 releases, they're like, oh, now this is the real upgrade. So they were quietly able to change the internal dynamics and geometry of the gun. If there was any issues, they could quietly say, oh, well, the V models had those issues. We were able to kind of iron those things out just in time for the Gen 6 to come out. So you'll notice with a lot of companies, and I've noticed this over the past 11 years of doing this, when a company is about to release a new gun, they'll run sales on all their old stuff, right? And then, of course, SHOT Show comes up and they announce all their new ones. Well, Glock, it's kind of a way of them saying, hey, we don't really have to put anything extra into these guns at all. We make some internal changes, and I'm not saying like, just anybody can do that, right? There is some R&D and stuff they have to do, sure. But they've been doing it long enough. Those guys are smart. They know what they're doing. So it is almost a way of them running a sale without the sale to get rid of those models before Gen 6 just kind of takes over everything. Now, is that 100% provable? No, that is just my theory, but it would be a pretty good segue to get rid of some of those guns before Gen 6 comes into the lineup, because again, people are just going to buy every single Glock they come out with. Regardless of the reasons, though, whether we were the experiment for them or it was a catalog reset, a standardization, or just trying to avoid lawsuits, the fact that lawsuits and geometry and criminals essentially are shaping what our gun companies do. And when I say our gun companies, remember, these gun companies, Yes, we have to give them money. We all understand that. But they provide a constitutional service to us. They are very important to Americans, right? We all kind of understand that. And the service they provide is one of the most important. But when they're shaped by lawsuits and gun control advocates, that's where I got a problem with it. And that's why I say, hey, if Glock was trying to shield themselves, look, I don't have to pay those legal bills. And all I know is that they made that decision and that's kind of the route they went with it. But any further bending by any other company is going to scream to the other side that we can bend them to our will. We don't have to ban guns. We just got to put enough legal pressure on them in order for them to either ban them, change them, or face the repercussions. That to me is a loss either way. I understand what Glock did, but again, if every company does that, it's just going to open the door for more lawsuits, more changes, and affect gun owners in a huge way. So there we go. The Gen 6 Glock dynamic. That's my opinion. I'd love to hear yours. Let me know what you think down below. If you like what I do, consider subscribing. See you in the next one. And as always, hold 'em down.